Good evening and welcome to Public Affairs Public Access on Houston Media Source TV. I'm Gene Preuss, and with me is Ray Valdez. Ray, we're going to do a show. We haven't been on the air doing a show before. This is we haven't had Public Affairs Public Access on for a little while, right? I think it's been 2 years. Mm-hmm. And so back on the organization that we're working with is Ray's organization. Ray, tell us a little bit about C60 Inc.
Well, C60 Inc. is an organization that was set up by the members of LULAC Council 60. It's a 501c3, and originally the sole purpose was to do the restoration of the LULAC clubhouse. It had fallen in disrepair and had been shut down in 2013 because the membership had deemed it unsafe. And so they shuttered it, and we started talking about what was the best direction to go, and we thought, let's form a nonprofit so we can raise funds to do the restoration. And that's how we started off, and we're still working towards that, but we've included a lot of different things now. We're into programming. We've done a few projects with Arte Público Press over at the University of Houston, and of course, we've done some collaborative work with the LULAC Council 60. So we're very much tied to the council and to LULAC, and still trying to raise money to finish working on the clubhouse. It's been a project of love and hate.
So the show that we want to do, and this is the first time we're doing it, is we want to focus on the Hispanic community in Houston, Southeast Texas, the state, and the nation, and look at the issues that affect the community, how they affect us. With us tonight, with Ray and I tonight, are several friends of ours. On my left is Karina Gonzalez. Karina, why don't you say a little bit to introduce yourself to people?
Hi, my name is Karina Gonzalez. I am currently a district director for State Representative John Rosenthal. My duties is constituent services and pretty much maintain the district.
Mario Salinas.
Yes, hi, my name is Mario, and I'm a proud fourth generation Houstonian. As you can tell, I'm a person that has a speech impediment, but I work hard to empower everyone to claim their voice and tell their stories each and every day. And I think that's what we need with our community, is to claim our voice, and again, to have folks understand our stories.
And rounding out the show tonight, we have Roger Palomino. Roger, you want to tell everybody a little bit about who you are?
Sure. I'm Roger Palomino, the Outreach Director here at Houston Media Source Public Access Television. And I'm here in the organization. Basically, my duties are to be the face of the organization and to conduct orientations for those out there that want to have representation and access to resources here in the city of Houston.
So Ray, we've put together a panel of very active, involved people in the community. And I think that, part of the programming that C60 is trying to do is to educate and inform and address some of the issues that members of the Hispanic community in Houston are facing right now. And all of you have been involved in this for quite some time. So let's talk a little bit about where we are today. Here it is, November 14th, 2024. We just had a big election, right? It's election, I guess, fallout from election season every year at this time. So let's talk a little bit about where we are in the community, and we all represent different aspects of the Hispanic community in Houston. Talk about where we are and where we're going. Let's look at some issues. What are some of the issues that drive you most, Ray?
Well, last night was our LULAC Council 60 meeting, and one of the things that I was most concerned about was the proposition of having the 2025 agenda, the program, because there's talk of eliminating Head Start and also doing away with the Department of Education, which really impacts our community in big ways because we have so many young Latinos that are in these early learning programs that are going to be affected. And especially the first time kids, the ones that are Spanish speakers, they really do benefit a lot from that special programming that we have in the schools through Head Start. And with the early lunch or with the free lunch program, that's a lot of times the only good meal that these children are going to have that day. And if we wind up getting rid of the Department of Education, that free lunch goes away. And so, I was talking to my people about, we need to start gearing up and looking forward as to how are we going to fill that need, because it's going to be a huge need.
And on that, I think that we should hope for the best, but prepare for the worst, right? And I do think that this is going to make us understand that this isn't just about red versus blue, or my team versus yours. This is about real world, day in, day out things. And I think that if we do see some of the things that you are talking on, it will make people wake up and understand that this is real world stuff, right?
Well, it's and you know this, working in the state rep's office, that when we have a shift at the national level like we're going to have, that it trickles down. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing is that all the supporters for Trump are being appointed and anointed, and they're getting a much bigger voice. And our governor is a huge supporter of Trump, and that means that whatever is going to happen in D.C. is going to impact us here in Texas. So I'm a little concerned.
What do you think, Karina?
Personally, myself, I feel like coming down into this coming session, it is going to be very tough. One of the biggest topics is going to be immigration. And that ties on to right now, one of the bills that has been drafted is whether we're going to allow undocumented students, go to school, public school here in Texas. And currently our public schools are underfunded. So obviously it puts a strain into the school budget. But at the same time, because Texas is a state border, a border state, it's always conflicting, because at the state level we need to maintain ourselves at the state level, but at the same time whatever is going to happen in DC is going to affect us. So there's always like a fight between staying within our jurisdiction and crossing that line. And at the state level, we have to work with Republicans. That's the only way we can get any bills across. At the state level, it's now more of a blue-red matter, but unfortunately, the same way, it's like sports. I'm gonna be loyal to my team regardless of what the issue is. No, and they don't even keep in mind that this affects lives. This affects children. This affects families. Families who, our kids are U.S. citizens, the parents are immigrants. The system is not, it's failing us in
Right,
every
I
single
mean,
aspect.
The problem with immigration is that it falls under the jurisdiction of the executive office, right? So the president drives that agenda. So, you know, he can come out and lay all these edicts out. And one of them they're already talking about is DACA, is, you know, we're going to start documenting all the undocumented. And, you know, that's one of the programs that may fall by the wayside.
But I mean, do you think about DACA that most folks don't understand? These are the most documented people out there. In order to get approved, you had to go through everything, your 5th grade report card, anything to prove that you were here in the U.S. by a certain age, by a certain date. And then after that, every other year, you had to pay an upwards of $500 to have your eye scanned, fingerprints scanned, background check, just to have the right to work and pay taxes into Social Security and other things that you cannot get anything out of. So in terms of who do we know is here and who do we know is staying out of trouble, DACA people are the ones that we know are the people that we want to live next door and work next to.
Yeah, they may be the people that we want to have us live next door. That doesn't mean those are the people that Trump wants living next door.
Well, Roger, you've been awfully quiet. What do you think?
Well, I think any program that helps kids is very important. And you were talking about like education and what that'll mean if we have undocumented people coming in and getting into the education system. But I feel like right now we have been facing issues with our education system for a long time, actually for like, what, more than a decade. So I don't think there is a simple solution, but I think the best thing we could do is just have these conversations with people, especially within our communities, because like we were saying too, a lot of these kids that are born in this country have undocumented parents. And so the last thing you want to do is separate them from their families. But you also want to do what's best for everyone at the same time too, because I know growing up here as I eventually became a citizen, but at one time when we came in the 80s, my dad, through his oil company, they actually sponsored us to get our residency. And so when I looked at the cards back in the 80s and I asked my dad, I'm like, why does my card with my picture say resident alien? I mean, it makes it sound like we're from a different planet. And he was trying to explain to me in the simplest way what that basically means. And so I always grew up with that, like, okay, why is that term used for undocumented? Especially if you're trying to become a resident. So I don't think there is one simple solution, but having those conversations and honest conversations with kids is probably the best route to go right now.
Right.
So like a resident alien like Alf,
Yes, like Alf, yes.
eating cats.
Yeah,
And dogs.
thank you, yes.
And dogs.
Yeah, I just got that reference, yes.
Alf
Sorry about
only
that.
ate cats though.
You catch up on your cats?
I'm not Alf. I cannot answer that.
I'm here all night, folks.
Tip your waiter.
Tip the waiter. So this, if you're just tuning in, this is Public Affairs, Public Access on Houston Media Source TV. And this is C60. We're discussing issues affecting the Hispanic community in Houston and Texas. I got thinking about Austin. I don't know why. I used to live in Austin, but it was a long, long time ago. But talking about Austin and what's going on in Austin, maybe that's where this was going. Or if not, I'm going to try to save this.
Good luck.
The issues that happen in Austin really do affect us. I tell students, I said, I don't care who you vote for. I really do, but I don't. You know, I want you to vote.
Right.
And I want you to vote, and how you vote is really up to you. I can't tell you how to vote. But I always think we get so wrapped up, and this, I mean everybody, gets so wrapped up by watching television and watching the big elections, the big campaigns, the president, the vice president, and we're not really looking at the politicians, the lawmakers, the elected officials who affect us on a day-to-day basis, and that's our local elected leaders and our also the people in the House and the people in Austin and the people in the Senate in Austin. They're the ones who really have a more day-to-day effect on us here. How do you see that playing out? Why don't we pay more attention to that?
Well, I mean, I'll just state because civics has been replaced by what I call the partisan industrial complex, right? Every year we have the most expensive election ever, every 4 years. Pardon me, right? And again, everything is overshadowed by this red versus blue thing, right? Mm-hmm. But Gene, absolutely, it's those folks that represent us on a local level where we can go and we can interact with their great staff there. And their staff will take the time to look us in the eye and say, tell me what's going on. How can we help you? What's important to you? And on that note too, I know of tons of local elections that have hinged on, no kidding, a carload of people, right? You can get people out, you can get your block out, your neighborhood out, your family out, and you can make a huge impact on who represents you on that local level.
Yeah, it's, I don't do block walking any longer. My knees, just don't hold up like they used to. But, I've seen that there's been a shift in the way that we do politics. They're a little meaner than they used to be. And sometimes because of that, the people that are supposed to be helping us get a little gun shy. I mean, because people are calling up and they're angry and, they're acting out. And it makes it really, really hard sometimes when you're working in, like you are, for a state rep, to get to what the root of the problem is when someone's just, going off on you, right? I mean, you want to help, but sometimes it's hard to help, right? So, I mean, you see these complaints all the time, right? I mean, how do you, deal with that kind of thing?
Well, I can definitely give you an example. This past summer, I kept on getting a lot of calls about car insurance. Why is my car insurance so high? And if there's anything that we can do at the state level. And the truth of the matter is a lot of people are not aware what their elected officials really do. I get calls, is your representative Republican, Democrat? They don't even know which party we stand in. And they don't even realize a lot of these elected officials sit in committees, in hearings, and they're in charge of insurance, they're in charge of, health. And, they're just sitting there and not advocating for the constituents as they wish they were. And that's more, constituents need to be out there calling their elected officials and asking them, hey, what are you doing? Is there anything I can do to help you? Right. And get more educated and informed, because the lack of information is affecting everyone, not just Democrats or Republicans, but it's really the lack. They just hear, they go by word, and that's really false information that is affecting not just the Latino community, but every other community.
So, I mean, is that really the best way to reach out, is to call, or is emailing, texting? You know,
Yes.
what's the best way to really get your message to the elected official?
Personally, myself, I try my best to get in contact with our constituents, phone call, email. I had an intern who was extremely surprised at how easy and accessible we are to the community and to the public. So it is up to you, who you want in that office. Do you want someone who's going to be responsive to his constituent, or do you want someone that is going to be sitting in their throne? And you gotta inform, educate yourself. If you know your state representative is not answering to your constituent request, maybe you should think and educate yourself more.
And many times it might have something to do with generations of like your family saying, oh, it's not polite to really question someone, or it's not polite to really, you know, just ask them this question because it almost sounds like confrontational. So I think many times within our community, different generations feel different ways. Some have access to the internet and social media, so for them it might be easier to get in touch with you guys, but you have other generations that might feel like, no, it's not very polite for me to go and ask questions because it might come across as something, you know, that isn't positive, you know, and so they try to be as respectful as possible. So I think it's probably a mix of that.
Let's, I want to touch upon something that you're saying and an attitude that you're talking about. What does it mean to be Hispanic? Or do we even call, I mean, there's a lot of terms out here nowadays. You know, Ray, one of the things that you and I talked about a long time ago was how come nobody calls themselves Chicano anymore? Or when I was growing up, and this was in Central Texas, we were Mexican, or, I mean, even though nobody had been to Mexico in about 100 years, right? But we were Mexican or Mexican American, Latino, Spanish speaking. So, you know, your family's from Peru.
Peru,
So, what do you consider yourself?
That's interesting you're asking that. I consider myself either, now the new term is Latinx. So either Latinx, Latino, or Hispanic, a Spanish-speaking origin.
Oh, okay, so let me throw a gasoline on this.
Sure.
Nobody's using Latinx. Only, I was reading a report, 4% of the population uses it. And it really kind of is talking about a specific, one group has adopted it more. That's younger people, and then also the LGBTQ community.
Right.
Ray, what do you think?
No, I'm an old school Chicano. I still identify as Chicano. And because, you know, that's my identifier. I named myself. I didn't wait for someone to come and hang a label on me. If I was going to have a label, that's the one I wanted.
I know some labels people have hung on. We'll talk about that later on.
At the end of the show.
At the end of the show.
So my take is this. Why have we been talking for decades about what do we call ourselves? And my take, my blunt take, is because we are a colonized people that have had our culture and our history taken from us. Part of the work that we do here at this table is to reclaim that culture, history, right? But again, if you think about the biggest single demographic group of this county, city, state, and yet in 2024, we're still talking about who are we? What do we call ourselves? And again, that's the result of we have not had control of our schools for hundreds of years. We have not had control of our institutions for hundreds of years. So we need to reconstruct that, but I'll state this. I don't get hung up on what folks choose to call them selves. If you want to work and build, then let's get to work.
Karina, let me come to you in just a second. I think somebody's on the phone, which is amazing because no, we lost him already.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Karina.
Damn, so close.
Me personally, it's very interesting because I see a lot of people, younger people, who do call themselves Latinx, but I also know a few people who are like, why are we listening to the Americans once again telling us how to call ourselves? Why are we labeling us, like they're telling us how to label ourselves, and here we go like she's following. And some are like, well, Latinx is non-binary, it's gender neutral. Me personally, I don't care. If you're gender neutral, if you're not, I don't care. However you decide to call yourself, what I really care is, are you advocating for our community? Mm-hmm. But I do want to point out, we continue being sheeps in this community. Mm-hmm. The white man tells us, oh, have you considered yourselves calling yourselves Latinx? We went from being Mexican Americans to Chicanos to Tejanos to Latinx. So once again, what are we? And that colonization mentality of they're telling us, hey, what about Latinx? And people are like, oh, I like that. Mm-hmm. And each its own, but I do think we need to be aware of the fact that just because someone's telling us, hey, how about consider the white man telling us, hey, what about Latinx? Mm-hmm. And we listen.
And I agree to what both you and Mario are saying, because there's not one simple answer, because we're very intersectional. We're a very intersectional community. Mm-hmm. So when people ask me about Latino and what shade you are you brown? It's like we're all shades, because really you look at Latin America and the history, in a lot of the Latin American countries, you have your Afro-Latino, your Asian Latino, your European Latino, your Mestizo, your Indigenous. So it's very intersectional, and then you have the blending of different other cultures and religions. So yeah, there's not one simple answer. But yeah, I feel like we do have to take control of that narrative, because especially I, as an actor, I see less and less representation in media. And I feel like unless we start telling those stories ourselves about our communities, then people are always going to get the information wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and if I always say, if you want to be called something, I will respect that, and because there are so many different. Let's talk about what does it, not only what are we going to call ourselves, but when outsiders, when politicians, especially we're in the aftermath of the political season, what is the traditional Hispanic? Is every Hispanic working two jobs, driving a truck called Juan or Juana, or has 10 kids, eats tortillas every day and beans? I mean, there's a lot of stereotypes out there. Absolutely. And here it is, 2024, and people, I thought they had gone away. People still have them. People still say, this is what the Hispanic community is, this is what the Mexican American community should, this is how you should vote. We just saw 50%, I think, the statistics tell us, 50% of Hispanics voted for Trump. We're not all voting Democrats. Mm-hmm. So, what is the Hispanic?
And so that is like stating, what do blonde-haired folks eat, right?
Well, they all eat the same thing.
Right, exactly, right? I mean, we are the second biggest single demographic group in the U.S. Mm-hmm. So of course you have some folks in there that are high income, high education. You have some folks that are blue collar. Some folks like mine whose family has been here for a long time and some great folks that, you know, might not have been here for a long time, but they're here to do this same thing that folks have done since the beginning of history and say, is there something better for me over that hill over there, right? But to your point, Gene, I think, you know, even if you feel good or bad about how things ended up, I think both parties understand now that they cannot ignore us. And again, we're the second biggest demographic group in the U.S. So ignore us at your peril.
If you're just now joining us, it's Houston Media Source TV, and we are talking about issues affecting the Hispanic community. I'm Gene Preuss, and we've got Roger Palomino, Ray Valdez, my co-host, Mario Salinas, and Karina Gonzalez. Karina, you work in an office, you deal with a lot of people's problems. Do you still are there still people that you interact with that have stereotypical ideas about the Hispanic community?
Of course, of course. Even within the House of Representatives, when I go up there, I have other staff members come up to me like, "What are you?" They can't even. They're like, "You look mixed," and I'm like, "No, I'm Mexican. Like my parents are Mexican. I was born and raised in Texas, but it's misrepresented in every single way. You know, even within our own community, we have." Within own racism, we have within own classism, and that is affecting us. The problem is within our community, and we're allowing others to take advantage of that. But most of all, I also feel like there is a little bit of patriarchal and matriarchal within families, which can swing someone's vote in a certain way. So yes.
Roger, what do you think about the stereotyping?
I know what she means because growing up, I had that type of reaction all the time. Either they tell me, Roger doesn't sound Hispanic, or what are you, or where are you originally from? Oh, your English is very good. So I get a mix of different things. But I think the one stereotype people have is that, you know, they feel like if you say, because I've used this term a lot, that I am traditional, but I'm modern at the same time. So they think if you're traditional, that you're only doing things the way generations before us have done, but I'm modern in the sense that I'm heavily involved in the voting process since I've been actually naturalized as a citizen to vote. So yeah, I think that's the one stereotype people have of Hispanics, is that we're traditional.
Well, my story is a little different. You know, I get to just sit and play the white guy because I'm fair-skinned. My granddaughters are blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and they asked me the other day, what percentage of Mexican blood do we have? So we did a little bit of math, and you know, they're about a third Mexican, but they don't look Mexican. And they said, why is that such a big deal? And I said, because when someone gets your college application at some, you know, college, and they have quotas, they're going to see that last name Valdez, and they're going to make some assumptions about who you are based on your Spanish surname. And I said, what you have to do is to show them in your application, in your resume, who you are by your accomplishments. You know, because that's what it's all about, is who do you want to be, who do you want to become. There's always going to be people out there that want to pigeonhole you, that will in some way want to demean you, because for some reason we all want to be on top, and in order to get on top it seems like we have to push someone down. And because I am fair-skinned, I've heard it directly from white guys, because you know, I've worked in construction industries where these guys are pretty, you know, foul-mouthed, and you know, they're prejudiced, and you hear a lot of nasty things about, you know, beaners. You know, I heard beaners for a long, long time growing up. And it's like, you know, why are we beaners? You know, so it takes, you know, you have to have a thick skin if you grow up in Texas, because there's a lot of prejudice to go around. Someone's always picking on someone. And, whether you're a Latino or you're a Chicano or a Latinx or just on parole, everyone seems to have a label. So better to be ahead of the curve, right? And pick one that you like. Mm-hmm. And to have someone hang one on you that you don't.
Right, and you bring to mind, right, like we do need to have a thick skin, right? And as you were speaking, I thought about that old quote of walk softly but carry a big stick, right?
Right.
And I've been involved with movements and organizing, but you know what? I realize now we don't have to react to everything.
Well,
But the big stick that we've got is our numbers. The question is this: can we create local spaces where we can get our numbers in order and say, look, today we act. We don't react, but we are going to be proactive and create the kind of culture and community we want in this, the most diverse city in the U.S. And I'll end with this. They state that the rest of the U.S. will look like us in Houston in about 30 years. So that means that we have a chance in the here and in the now to create a model that we can show to the rest of the nation. This is how you can do it. It won't be easy. And again, working with people is always very hard, but we do have a chance to connect with each other here.
Right. And one of the things that I see a lot is that you're right about being, the conquered people, right? We have the numbers, but we never act like we do. Our attitudes are still a little, subdued. We have respect and we try to be nice. But sometimes, in the political arena, it is a confrontational, exercise. There's someone there that may have a different of an opinion, and that different of opinion may come down to whether or not you get $100,000 for a program or not, right? And so, you have to go in there and you have to fight for what you want. And a lot of times, we're just not prepared for that. We're wanting to take that, hey, I really don't want to hurt your feelings here, but, I don't agree. Sometimes, when you're a Chicano, you have to raise your voice. And sometimes you act out a little bit. And the establishment gets a little scared sometimes when, you act aggressively. But we found as Chicanos that we were able to get people's attention because of that.
Right.
Now, they didn't want to talk to us at the boardroom. They wanted LULAC. They didn't want the Chicanos, right? Because they were a little more domesticated. But, it's a strategy. We applied it where we could, and the thing about that I think about is like, to what end? We're still dropping out at the same high rate that we did when I was a child back in the 70s and going to school. We're still dropping out. Our number of people that are graduating from college is still low. right? The ones that are attending Ivy League universities are being monitored. I mean, they're run, you know, someone was telling me the other day that Harvard and Yale still take the same number of minority kids that they were taking back in the 60s, 70s. You know, they haven't increased those numbers. So, you know, where are our increases? How do we get there?
Yeah, that's a good point. Before I go any further, I want to remind everybody, if you're just now tuning in, this is Public Affairs, Public Access on Houston Media Source TV. And this is C60. We are talking about things that are affecting the Hispanic community in Texas and Houston and everywhere else, because we don't like to be constrained.
So I want to finish it with one thing, is this book that I brought, okay? Because we were talking about who are we, what are we, and this one says we're Mexican Americans. And when I was going to school, I had a young man who had graduated early, brilliant, and was teaching at Austin High School, and he would come in early in the morning and make up the lesson plans and use the mimeograph to do the lesson for that day, teaching Mexican American studies. And up until that point, my history came out of a little cartoon book that was about this big, and it was illustrated, you know, little cartoons. That was my, you know, Texas history.
Texas history movies.
Right. And as we move forward and we talk about who we are and who we want to be, is, you know, are these things useful? To, you know, here this one says, you know, we're going to be studying Mexican American history. This event coming up this weekend, we're going to be looking at Chicano memorabilia, right? We want to capture some of this information.
Absolutely. And so, Ray, I'm glad you brought that up. So, yes, this Saturday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., if you're at home now and you have a photo album of your uncles, aunts who were a part of the local Chicano movement, or if you heard stories growing up, guess what? If you come down the 2101 South Street, we will record those stories. We will scan any old photos and we will give you a copy, and at no charge at all, because we want those that come after us to know that we played an active part in making this town what it is. We've always been here. We were here now, and guess what? We'll be here in the future too. So come on down, please.
And that's at the Leonel Castillo Center, right?
Yes.
Yes. But they're studying it. They're writing about it.
We are, you know, when I was at, I never took a Mexican American history class until I was in working on my PhD at Texas Tech, and the professor that I had, he told me he was from Corpus Christi. He was an old weatherman who worked for the Navy and had been in meteorology, and he had gotten his PhD despite the fact that there was a lot of prejudice against him doing it. His superior officers said, well, you know, Mexican like you want to do meteorology or get a PhD for. So, but he got his PhD and he was teaching up there at Tech, and Camilo Martinez was his name, and he always called me Mr. Preuss. I think he taught all of his students that way. Yeah. Mr. Preuss, let me talk to you for a second. Why do you want to get your PhD? Well, I like history. I'm good at it. I've got 2 other degrees, and I think I know what I'm doing, and I want to keep doing that. Right? It's something I can do fairly well. And he says, "What do you want to study?" I said, "Well, I was thinking about doing Mexican American history." He goes, "Don't do that." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because you'll find yourself pigeonholed." He says, "Study other things. Study Greek history. Study Roman history. Study, French history. Study whatever you want to say. Don't let them call you just a Mexican historian. And I followed that. And the funny thing, the great irony is I teach Mexican American history now, right, at university. And but I have a broader background. Sometimes I teach British history. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, that was a great course.
That British history course. Tell us, what are the issues that you're seeing here? Let's transition a little bit. What are the issues that you're seeing the community needs to address right now?
Oh, there's a list. Well, the main top ones right now is public education, immigration, but most of all, also health. Health, like we have families who are undocumented, who have U.S. citizen kids, and they can't afford health. Either they're on Medicaid, and then the federal funding there isn't there. Right now, Medicaid is definitely the biggest program that we need to address. I see a lot of constituents who need help with their Social Security, with Medicaid, insulin, and they're struggling. And it's affecting not just the immigrant community, it's affecting everyone. And people don't want to they want to blame a certain party for the outcome of it. But they're so willing to take the money when they need it.
Right.
But they're voting against it.
You bring up a very good point. And something I was thinking about when we talk about education, we talk about one issue, we talk education, health stuff, but all these issues bleed out into other issues, right? Education is a civil rights issue. Education is a food issue, right? Because those kids getting fed. Education is a financial issue because it's how people advance in their careers. Education has healthcare aspects, and the same is true of any of these issues. It's a web, right? They're not little isolated issues. They feed into each other, and so there's no easy answer to any of this.
And on that note, Gene, I often make the point that the first interaction that we have with local government is what? Schools. And that's where we learn, does my government care about me, or does my government not? And kids know if that person in front of the classroom truly respects them, truly cares for them, or
Well, Mario, that's a big burden you're placing on those teachers
Well,
who are underpaid, overworked. They represent the school district, and now they
Gene,
represent the government.
But guess what? I was in your first Mexican American history class, and look, here we
are now.
Because again, we were able to connect there. And all I'm stating is that schools play a huge part in the people that we become, right?
Well, and looking at that, talking about education, LULAC took up the fight back in the 50s and 60s, and working through the different councils across the state and nationally. We're suing different school districts and states to be able to get access to the mainstream schools. I mean, our LULAC council here in Council 60 here in Houston was part of some lawsuits, Delgado versus Bastrop, and there was, who was the other one before that, Mendez.
But there's been this case in California,
Right.
Delgado versus Bastrop, right?
Right, and it's a continuing fight. And the problem is that if you have a Spanish-speaking kid that comes into the school and doesn't understand what the instruction is, if you don't have Spanish-speaking teachers, you don't have bilingual education, then they're really at the mercy of the district. And in the old days, the tests were administered in English, and if you couldn't pass the test, they could mark you as being retarded. And once you were marked as retarded, then you received absolutely no benefits whatsoever. You didn't even get to go to the Mexican school. They just kicked you out.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the end of your academic career.
Before we get calls on using that term, I mean, that was the term that people were using
Yeah.
back in those days.
That's what it was called.
That's what you were called.
And,
That's what they were called.
And also, can I also state that I know that vouchers will be a big thing in Austin coming up, and it's expected that Abbott now has everything he needs to pass that. Now let me just throw this out there and state, well, if public funds are now about to go to private schools, why don't we start our own private schools? Especially when there's all this up in arms about us teaching our own history. And so I'm just putting that out there that, we need to look at what's coming down the bend there and just think about how can we best position ourselves.
And you're right. I mean, we need a strategy.
Yeah.
We definitely need, if the voucher money is where it's going to be, then we need to be in that line where they're handing out voucher money, right? And doing what we can to be able to exploit it, because that's what these other folks are going to be doing.
Roger,
Right.
what do you think we should be doing? What do you think is next on the horizon?
I like what all of you are saying. What I hear here at this table is we need to become more involved in everything. Events such as this happening this Saturday, being involved with all our political representatives. Just be well informed and don't be afraid of ask questions too. And that's one thing we want to emphasize here in public access television, is that we're here for everyone. Y también hablo español. So if anybody needs help with the English and you feel more comfortable in Spanish, I'm available for that as well.
Right.
So we're gonna.
I
have to
brought
start,
this for Karina.
Oh, okay. We're gonna start wrapping up things, and so I want to get last minute thoughts on all this. Where do we need to go in this show? What do we need to look at? What do we need to think about when we're talking about the Hispanic community? What do we think of next?
No, I agree with Mario. We need to start shifting, the narrative. We need to have a new attitude in terms of what our approach is to problem solving. We need to stop acting like we're the colonized people and start acting like, this is our colony and we're going to change it.
Absolutely. And I'll state this, that we need to empower young people. Over 50% of those under the age of 18 in the state are Latino. And I'll end with this. Race, said that we need to learn to speak up, speak out. Me, as a person with a severe stutter, I have never allowed that to shut me up. And I do this,
I agree.
to be an example to others. If you're at home now and dating, wow, that guy's up there. If I stuttered, I wouldn't be up there. Well, guess what? If I can do it, you can too. If you're a young person thinking about, wow, they talked about stuff that affects me, well, guess what? You have a voice that deserves to be heard. You have a story that deserves to be understood, and we at this table need to create space for that.
I know we didn't get much into this topic, but like you said, we need to encourage young people to be more involved. But more than all, we need to encourage our young Latinas, because, look, I'm in a table, 4 men, and I'm the only Latina here. we need to start creating safe environments for young Latinas because unfortunately, due to our culture, we're always like, you gotta act like a lady. Don't speak back, don't be rude, this and that. I came from a very patriarchal family, and that transitioned to a matriarchal family. Now my mom runs the household. Now I'm in charge, I'm the oldest, and you know, sometimes I'm the controversial one at home. I'm like, no, this is wrong. You taught us to be respectful, this and this, but I don't see you preaching the same thing you're doing. Like, I need you to do as you say. At the state level, I don't see many young Latinas in offices, which makes it hard, you know, being a Latina walking in with all these white men and you're like, damn, I'm the only one here. But we need to start creating environments for young Latinas as well and to start listening to young Latinas too because it's still a very men-dominated field.
You know, that is true. And, you know, I think about that when, you know, I was putting the show together and we talk about who can we get on there. And there was, we were going to have another female on here, but she had to cancel. So we're not as patriarchal as it looks. But, I mean, it's a good thing to be aware of, and it's a good thing to be reminded of. I think you're absolutely right. But it shocks me that you say that you still don't see a lot of representation. Roger, what about representation?
Representation, like she's saying, is very important. We need to have representation all across the board. A lot of women, a lot of men, Latinx, you know, non-binary, people from the LGBTQIA community. So I say, be the guerrera that you know you are, and never be afraid to speak up.
I want to thank everyone tonight, not only for being on the show, my co-host Ray Valdez, Roger Palomino, Karina Gonzalez, Mario Salinas. Thank you for all the great discussion. I think this is a topic we really, I mean, we can go so far. And the other thing to remember this is it's issues that affect the Hispanic community affect all communities, right? Rising water raises all ships. And so these are not just issues for us, these are issues for everybody. So, for C60, I'm Gene Preuss, and thank you all, and thank you for joining us this evening on Public Affairs, Public Access on Houston Media Source TV. Have a good night.